Can you show us this first one? I was pretty mind blown when you even just told me about this. From Slack to code.
Yeah, sure. This is an example of how we would use something like Devon to solve a problem. So, we have Slack, like many companies who use Slack. We have an internal customer support tool that we've built called helper.ai. And we had a feature request from somebody basically adding this kind of assign yourself button when something is not assigned. So if you use something like GitHub, it just basically, instead of 2 clicks where you have to like first click on assign and then click your name, it's 1 click. So you save, your customers 1 click, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And so this was reported by one of our customer support staff, and she explained exactly why. This is very great. This is like exactly like the perfect feature request, which is like what you want and why you want it. And so I just said, hey, Devon, solve this, address this. And Devon reads the Slack thread, sees the 2 images, and then sort of explains its planning and keeps you up to date. And then eventually opens a pull request. And here you can read the code as you should. You should probably test it, make sure it did what you want it to do. Obviously, if you have tests, you should make sure the tests are up to date, all that kind of stuff. So Devon, this is kind of goes through and creates this, and then I do it and review it. So this is a good example of something that like no one had to really spend too much time thinking about, but it was solved, it was deployed, and all the deployment and all that has long been automated. So all of a sudden, this is now a feature in production for people to use and benefit from without us having to really do anything. So yeah, that's one example.
That's crazy. So the original process at a larger company that most people are living through right now, they are going to get that request in Slack. The PM is going to take note of it. They're going to investigate it. They're going to see, oh, how many people is this affecting? Is this a big enough request? Then they're going to prioritize it. Once they prioritize it, there's going to be a request for create a PRD about this. They'll create the PRD about it. Then engineering is going to create their engineering spec about it. Then finally, it'll get prioritized in a sprint, and an engineer will actually work on it. Weeks of coordination. You guys just decide, we want to do this. Devon, address it.
Yeah, well, I have a big reason that companies like that they do that is because they need buy-in from so many people, right? So the nice thing about Gumroad is basically just me. It's a dictatorship, right? So that's kind of why we can move super fast. Is you don't have to kind of like put together all this sort of work that's really just to get like internal buy-in. It has nothing to do with actually shipping the change. The hard part is like aligning all the people to kind of get behind that specific decision. One other reason I really like AI is because I think it sort of is quite good. It's sort of like 99th percentile at many things. And so generally the decisions it makes are pretty good ones. And actually like things like design and code, we just kind of defer to the AI, right? And so it should come up in that sort of PRD. Something that's important should show up in the spec conversation itself. And if it doesn't, that's not that important. The AI can decide however to tackle the problem. As long as it meets the criteria in the spec, it's going to it's correct, quote unquote.
But could bigger companies adopt this for features that are a little bit less contentious, that don't need buy-in? Like, I feel like there's going to be a future world where some companies are taking more of how you guys are working, maybe creating a bar for certain features, and that way shipping much, much faster.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that a bigger company would probably do it. I don't have a lot of experience working at big companies, so I don't know, to be honest, like the mechanics of them. But basically, you would just do it on a team basis, right? So you would pick a specific project. Microservice architecture is quite popular in these big companies for this reason, right? Where you can people get frustrated that they have to move at the slowest pace of the large organization, and so they think that if they like factor off and they just have like a small API microservice, that they can now all of a sudden move much faster. They can make different technical decisions. They can make different architectural choices. It's true to some degree, but that introduces like a lot of other complexity that you then have to think about. And I think my bias is to tend towards like, what's the right approach such that one person could ship the entire product. Like, so a lot of the way that big companies move faster makes it impossible to get smaller. Like their process actually is probably quite fast, but requires like a number of people that you can't, like you need a PM, you need the designer, you need the engineer. Like the way they work, you can't, without refactoring the process, you're not going to be able to get, and that's largely why these roles even exist. People talk a lot about automation and unemployment and stuff like that. But most of that unemployment, like it will happen to these kinds of jobs. It'll be mostly these kind of like producer like jobs. But two, they're going to persist a lot longer than people think because the production process is quite rigid in most of these organizations. You're not going to see companies all of a sudden decide to get rid of like 3 steps in their process. It's very difficult once you have process to unwind it, unless you have some sort of like what happened recently with, was it EA, I think, which is when private they were acquired. So in the case of EA is a good example. Like they probably have built up like a ton of bureaucracy over like the last 30 years that in the next 5 years is going to get chopped. Right? Like the bureaucracy is going to get massively sliced. Better or worse, it's going to lead to a much higher volatility in what EA as a company is going to ship instead of just like FIFA 26, FIFA 27. Like they're not doing much, right? Like they're really beholden to this bureaucracy, which basically exists because FIFA was such a successful game that they basically haven't had to do anything innovative for 30 years. That will now sort of start to happen, and which I think that's like sort of I'm actually more interested in that. Like, how does AI, can you revitalize these existing businesses and brands, not necessarily new businesses and new brands? I have like zero interest, frankly, almost in like new things right now.
I hope you enjoyed that short clip. You can check out the full episode here.